Welcome to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables, and whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a café au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to the Simple Sophisticate podcast. I want to begin today's episode by expressing my support for everyone coping with the impact felt on their and their loved ones' lives and livelihoods due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as all of those striving civilly for justice and equality in our world. Today's episode 224, is an episode that was a top episode from season 5, but I've chosen it because I think we have an opportunity to make awesome change in our individual lives, but obviously the world. And this particular episode is more focused on the individual, on you. But as we know, collectively, we can all make a difference when we see change in ourselves, and thus our thinking and our actions and the way we go about our lives. But this particular episode is titled How to Welcome Simplicity into Your Life, Live Differently for 1 month, because I really think, for me at least, and I wrote about this in today's Monday motivational post, if you wanted to stop by the blog today, there is an opportunity to reflect on what really is working and what really sits well with us as far as how we go about our routines and our stress levels and what we think we have to do, what we really should be doing, or simply just being. And this is going to be a unique journey for each of us. It's going to be individual to each of us, which is why I chose this, because it's just an ask of 1 month. And it doesn't have to be this month, it doesn't have to be next month, but to consider taking 1 month of changing things in your life and seeing what it's like at the end of that month. Is there the positive change that you had hoped? Is there a change that you didn't expect that you want to keep? But knowing that there's an end to the change that you're trying to do, meaning you're going to change a habit and you're just going to do it for 1 month, and then if you don't like it, you'll go back. That might make it easier to try to adapt to this new way of thinking or living or doing or being, whatever it is you're choosing. Now, when I originally posted this episode back in 2018, it just received so much positive response. And many of the responses were, I could do this for a month. That's not a bad idea. So I thought, well, we have August in front of us, right? We have half of July, we have August. And as many of you are teachers or going back to work in a more full-time capacity in the fall, or things are shifting in some way with your schedules that make them busier in the fall. Not everyone, though. I want to acknowledge that I know not everyone is in that situation. You're working very hard and really busy right now, more than ever before for some of us. But wherever you can find a month, maybe this is the episode to listen to. Now, I also really love The Petit Plaisir. It's a film that I thoroughly enjoyed, and many of you have read the book and enjoyed the book as well. I won't give any more hints away. I'll wait till you hear it in the episode. But I do hope you enjoy that as well. Now, this is the last rerun episode of the summer, and on August 10th, so on Monday, August 10th, a new episode will return with an interview with Lost in Cheeseland's creator and writer, Lindsay Tramuta. She's going to be here to talk about her new book, The New Parisian, and so much more. I'm excited to have her on the show. And French Week will be upon us that week, the second full week of August, and I'm looking forward to experiencing that with you. Also, I want to share that finally the Simple Luxurious Kitchen is getting customized so that I can begin taping hopefully by the end of August and have episodes to start our season 3 this September. So exciting things happening, and I'm looking forward to bringing them all to you. But first, I'm looking forward to sharing today's episode with you, how to welcome simplicity into your life, live differently for 1 month. Welcome to the Simple Sophisticate, and welcome to Season 5. We are kicking off Season 5 with a full episode that is hopefully going to jumpstart the simplicity in your life, even more so than you already have. We're going to really fine-tune the quality experience you have in your everyday life. So in episode 224, we're going to talk about how to welcome simplicity into your life by living differently for just 1 month. I'm going to break all of that down for you in today's episode, and I'm looking forward to it because I myself had a month away basically from my life in many ways this summer. And I started to think about it. And then I read a book about something that has sparked another idea, and it all kind of came together. And I was like, I want to talk to my listeners about this because I think you too will see ways to deepen the simplicity you already have in your life. But before I get to that, I want to briefly mention what today's petit plaisir is. A handful of my readers have highly recommended this, and I do as well. And I cannot wait to talk to you about it because I think it will be a thoroughly enjoyable film to watch at the end of a long week, at the end of a long day. Just anytime. You're going to love it. I can't wait to watch it again. It's that good. So stay tuned as I'll talk to you guys about that at the end of today's episode. But let's get into our topic today. As I said, we're going to talk about how to welcome simplicity into your life by living differently for just 1 month. How are we going to do that? Well, I want to begin with a quote from the book that inspired today's topic. It's written by Elaine St. James, and it was written more than a decade ago. In fact, almost 2 decades ago. Oh my goodness. And it was titled, or is titled, Living the Simple Life, A Guide to Scaling Down and Enjoying More. And here she says, one of the greatest challenges we all face is to find a happy balance between the opportunities that are available to us, the media-implanted urge to have them all, and our own desire to keep focused on the things that really matter. So I want to talk about momentum for a moment. Momentum is a powerful source of energy. And even though I am far from being a physicist, I understand the basic concept that since all objects have mass, and if an object is moving, it will have momentum, thus it will have power and or energy. We are objects of energy when we keep our schedules and lives running. Whatever pace you are moving at currently, whatever gear you're in, whatever speed you're going, if it is a pace you have become accustomed to for some time, it is easier to keep moving along at this pace rather than slow it down, and even easier to stay at that pace than speed it up. As we begin this season 5 of the Simple Sophisticate podcast today, and I've also included a schedule, by the way, of our whole season, so beginning today and ending up in next August of 2019. That's a link on the show notes for that. Many of us are stepping back into a fuller schedule with September, or at least a slightly different schedule from the previous season. Whether it is simply a busier schedule due to clients and staff returning from their holidays, or perhaps you as well are returning from your holiday, the pace tends to pick up. And if we aren't careful or conscious, we can move along with this energy without realizing that it may not work well for the balance we know is best for us. Now, granted, the pace you are stepping back into may be something you relish and it works well. And in this case, savor it. But simply be conscious of that energy that rolls forward and is easy to become swept up in without our being aware. If, however, the pace that fall or whatever new season you're stepping into, maybe you're stepping out of winter if you're in Australia and New Zealand in the Southern Hemisphere, and you're stepping into spring. I saw some pictures from a few individuals I follow on Instagram, and they were showing pictures of spring, and I was like, wait a second. It took a moment. I was really early in the morning. I had to stop and remind myself. But whatever new season you're stepping into, it brings us an opportunity to shift, to improve. And I have some ideas about how to do that, to instill this new pace of momentum that works best for our lives in today's episode. For the 3rd time, I read that book, Living the Simple Life, by Elaine St. James, just recently, and she published it in 1996. And it was upon reading it this summer that a few ideas she shared jumped out at me that had not previously. The idea that most predominantly jumped out at me was her suggestion to take a full month to live your life differently as a way to assess what you really need and determine what is helpful and what is actually hindering the quality of your life, or hindering it from becoming even more, having more quality in your life. Now, as I was reading this, I recognized that my own experience, having had the opportunity to travel to France for an entire month this summer, was something that did exactly what she was talking about. Now, during this time, as I've shared on the blog, I shared 2 different posts. I talked about doubting the default and how my trip to France woke me up. That was in episode 218. And I also wrote, why not let your brain calm down? And that was when I returned from France, and it was all inspired by that month away. And I have links to it on the show notes, each of those. The clarity that I gained about what was helping and what was obstructing the quality of my life was illuminated. But upon reflection, it was the duration of the trip that enabled this to be more readily recognizable. So in this instance, the length, so perhaps we could call that the quantity, was necessary. And I only say that because I have taken trips abroad, but it's been almost 20 years since I've actually stayed away that long. But it truly made a difference. And I know we can't all do that. We can't all go away like that. I'm not going to be able to go away like that. I don't know when ever again, perhaps at least not in the near future. But there's a way to do it right now in the life and the place that you are. And today, that's what this episode is all about, how to do that. Partly this was because after spending 4 weeks in another culture, any of us would become more acclimated than we even realize. And so upon returning, there is an element of shock to our system. Now, at least for me, there was, due to my fondness for the French culture. I really tried to step into that culture. I really tried to absorb it. I loved being there. It was my choice to be there. And so it was a shift back when I came back to Bend. However, as I just mentioned, I am confident that we do not have to or need to get away to another country to have this same experience, so long as we are conscious in the choices we make for that month. That month could truly shift our lives for the better if we go through this exercise. As a teacher, each summer I feel I am given this opportunity to reassess what is working and what isn't. But it is my choice to reflect and then put into place the changes I realize would be beneficial. I just happen to be a teacher, but there are many other jobs and ways of life that can provide this as well. So it's a choice. We can all do this. So here's the challenge and the opportunity. For one entire month, make one, some, or all of the suggestions I'm going to share here in a moment to your lifestyle that are inspired by Elaine St. James and my own experience and observations to free up more time in your life to do what you love or do nothing at all so that you can simply relax, sleep more, dream more, savor time with loved ones more, simply live as you please. With the month's conclusion, so you're going to go through that month, take an hour or a morning or an afternoon and reassess to see what differences, positive or negative, or just differences, you experienced. Now, I have a full list to share with you, but before I get into that, I want to introduce you to the sponsors of today's podcast episode. It's hard to find eco-friendly cleaning products that actually work, but Drops has finally done it. With over 10,000 5-star reviews, you'll see in no time how great their products are. Better yet, Drops delivers the powerful clean you need right to your door in eco-responsible packaging with carbon-neutral shipping. All pods are dosed exactly for your needs, so you never overpour or overpay again, and you can sign up for auto shipments to save big. And you can also pause, skip, or cancel at any time. Simply go to drops, DROPPS.com, and use the promo code SIMPLE30 to get 30% off your first order. Now, Drops are entirely manufactured in the United States, and they are never tested on animals. Drops offers custom cleaning solutions for every need: sensitive skin, and baby laundry detergents, stain and odor laundry detergents, laundry scent booster pods, as well as dishwasher detergent pods, wool dryer balls, which I love and actually have been using them for more than a year and continually appreciate the simplicity as well as the reusability of them. So whatever your needs are for laundry or dishwashing, look to Drops for eco-friendly cleaning products that work and work well. Visit drops.com and use promo code SIMPLE30 to get 30% off your first order. Today's episode is also sponsored by BetterHelp. If there is something that is preventing you from achieving your goals or living the life that you want to live, BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. Connect in a safe and private online environment that is also convenient, as you can start communicating in under 24 hours. This is not self-help. It is professional counseling. You can send a message to your counselor at any time. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can even schedule weekly phone sessions or video sessions, all without ever having to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room. Now, BetterHelp is committed to facilitating a great therapeutic match, so they make it easy and free to change counselors at any time if needed. Now, this is also more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available no matter where you live. BetterHelp is there for their clients worldwide with a broad range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas. So search for a licensed counselor in a variety of specialized areas such as anger, stress, anxiety, relationships, trauma, grief, self-esteem, LGBT matters. Anything you share is confidential, and it's convenient because it's on your schedule on video or phone sessions. So many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. Now, as a simple, sophisticate listener, I want to help you start living a happier life today. So you're going to get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/simple. Join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/simple. All right, welcome back. Let's talk about the many different ways you can bring back or welcome more simplicity into your life by just living differently for 1 month. Let's get right into this. The first one, arrive at work either earlier or later than you do now, and then either stay earlier or later than you do now also. In other words, shift when you are at work to try to find more productive hours, but do not stay longer than you currently do in total. That's the first one. So again, re-examining what you're doing out of habit that may actually be preventing you from being productive or more productive. Second one, get up an hour earlier. While this may require of you to go to bed earlier, observe just for 1 month how the day begins when you give yourself breathing room to savor having more control in how you set the tone for the day. Again, it's just for 1 month, but just noticing the difference in your energy in the morning. It may take a few days. It may take the first week to get comfortable with this. But I think what you'll notice is there's going to be a difference in your approach to the day. And this may not even be one you want to try. Third one, stop watching the news. While this doesn't mean you don't have to stay informed, as you can read or listen to the news, observe how no longer being the passenger when it comes to news viewing affects your attitude, assumptions, and stress levels. But you may want to take it a step further. And for number 4, stop reading or listening to the news just for 1 month to see what differences may arise due to the absence of perpetual information. Now, this is something I talked about in one of the posts I mentioned earlier, the post about letting your brain calm down. Really, for about that entire month that I was away, I really didn't pay attention to the news very closely. There are a few ways I would check in, but I did notice that helped me significantly to truly realize how bombarded my brain and my mind had been, and thus my nerves and my stress levels. Number 5, change your exercise regimen. If you work out regularly in the afternoon, try working out in the mornings and observe how you go about your day and what it feels like to have the evenings free. If you attend classes in the morning, try taking them in the evening instead. Again, just for a month. Number 6, turn off the television. Simple as that. I'll provide a link to a post that I talk about reducing the amount of television if that's something you also just want to kind of temper it, but still shift it a little bit. Number 7, take a couple of personal or sick days. Now, this is we're not talking about a ton of sick or personal days, but take more than you would normally or that you typically need and use them for your wellness. Use them to recharge. See how you feel. See what your productivity is like when you go back to work. Do them strategically, prepare before you leave, but see if there is a difference. Next one, talk to your boss to restructure your work days just for 1 month to maybe potentially, again, everyone's job's going to be different. It may not be an option, but if it is, consider asking. Ask for 4 days that have 10 hours of work instead of 5 that have 8 hours, if this is an option. The next one, spend an entire weekend without making or attending any social or family commitments and give yourself permission to just do what speaks to you. If you can do this for more than 1 weekend during this month of assessment, you might begin to see helpful trends of what refuels you and replenishes you. Next, eliminate all shopping except for necessities such as groceries and vital personal items. Another thing that Elaine St. James recommended is for those 30 days, keep a list of all the items you typically would have bought had they been beyond this list. If they're not personal items or groceries, list those items that you would normally just buy without thinking about it or would like to buy. So maybe a piece of clothing pops up and you really would like to buy it, but you're like, wait, nope, for a month I'm going to put a halt on that. And then take a look at that list at the end of the month. And see if any of those things are, number 1, still of interest to you. And number 2, ask yourself why. And would they be necessary? Another way to look at it is to do a tally of how much all those things cost and see how much you saved yourself at the end of the month. Next one, don't feel obligated to clean the house each week. Instead, pick up each day as you go and then clean every other week. Observe at the end of the month if this is indeed possible. Next, take a bath whenever the mood strikes. Morning, middle of the day, evening, if that's typically not in your routine. I started to do this a little bit more this summer, and it was prompted by my trip. I will say that. I would take a bath every once in a while in the late morning. I don't know how to explain how fantastic that was. And it shifted my energy. It depends on the day, obviously, but it's something to try to see what shifts for you. All right, next one. If possible, give yourself a long window of no appointments right after lunch as your energy begins to recharge from the fuel of food and the midday break. Now, in episode 194, I talked about the book titled When, and it was the Petit Plaisir. So if you do go to that post or that episode in the show notes, scroll all the way down to the end of it, and or skip all the way to the end of it if you're listening. And I talk about what he focuses on in his studies about the body and how it actually can peak if you get at least a 20-minute nap in and rest after lunch. It can actually peak after lunch in later afternoon, as well as in the late morning. So it's something to think about, is to not just push hard the whole day through, but examine how the pace you go through each day and see if you notice a difference. Just be more conscious again of how you move through your days to increase your productivity and your pleasure, really. So your mood and your just enjoyment throughout the day. Next, simplify meals. You could use the capsule menu approach that I talk about often on this blog, and I've linked to that in the show notes. Make sure your epicery or your pantry is well stocked, and I have a link to that post where I list the 37 items to have in your epicery to be able to cook anything that the season may offer, and simply challenge yourself to shop and cook seasonally. Next one, Stop using social media on designated days, perhaps the weekend, or every evening after. Pick a time. Be stricter than you might think you will do after the month. So maybe you think, well, I know I typically can't do the weekends, but for 1 month, I'm going to make sure maybe it's just one day, every Sunday, I do not check any of my social media, but I'm only doing it for a month. But then maybe you'll find that at the end of the month, it wasn't so bad and you really liked it. Who knows? Next one, stay off the phone, texting, or talking, except for emergencies for the entire month for making plans to meet in person. Sounds extreme, but often we welcome more internal stress with the conversations we have that are not face-to-face, when we can't see their expression, when it's easier to say or do certain things when you're not in front of the person physically. Yes, there is clearly a workaround here to use social media. But if this at all sounds tempting to perhaps motivate you to see more people face-to-face, to just simply text so that you can meet face-to-face, so keeping it very short on your texts, take this challenge. Observe if there are any differences in your stress levels. Potentially, the quality of conversations may improve as you do spend more time face-to-face, and thus your relationships will improve as well. And last but not least, spend a weekend or a day or even just an afternoon somewhere that will feel like an escape from the old habits that you are trying to tweak. Upon traveling to this destination, turn the phone off and be fully present. Engage, revel, and celebrate. Observe what feels good about where you are and the pace of the day or days. Now, the reason I say if you can, because when you're able to step away from the world, your everyday life, the temptations stay at home too, a lot of them. And you're able to, I was talking about this with a colleague recently. We're talking about why is it easier to just relax and be myself entirely and completely when I'm traveling abroad? And we both came to the conclusion it's because there's truly no expectations from anyone around you physically to do or be someone that you've been being. Even if parts of that person are truly or were truly you, if there was any part of you that isn't truly you or authentic, no one's going to know what you used to be, so they won't see the shift. And so I guess it's just a way to make it easier to get into good habits. Just the key again is to be conscious about the habits you're trying to recreate or create. All right, so that's the list of ways or things to try to either let go of or shift for just 1 month. Again, pick one, pick all of them, pick some of them, and just do them for 1 month. And then treat yourself to that day at the end of the month. So maybe October 1st, or maybe it's going to be October 4th if you start today or tomorrow. Put it on your calendar and your planner and say, for that day on October 4th, which I think is a Thursday, or half a day, or whatever it's going to be, block it out. Make it as an official appointment to assess. And really consider how you feel and why it was or what you did that created that feeling or that improvement in your life. And maybe things didn't improve with everything you did. And that's another thing to look at as well. Initially, this list that I've just shared may seem impossible, but remember, it is only for 1 month, and choose which ones pique your interest or affect areas in your life you want to improve. Again, remind yourself as you begin the month with anything that may be difficult, it is only for 1 month. And it probably will be more difficult initially. Push through that, hang in there. And if you want to tweet to me or you want to DM me on my Instagram, I'll provide you with inspiration, motivation, whatever I can do with regards to, connecting in that way, but just not on the days that we're not going to be checking social media, right? Because perhaps if you're like me, I've been trying to stay off social media in the evenings. I've been trying to get my work done by a certain hour and then putting my phone always goes to my office at night now. I'm getting far better at that, and it's made my nights far more rest-filled. But push through that first tough week if that's what you're feeling. And then keep going for 3 more weeks. That's all you would have. And see how it goes. For 1 month, here's an example from my own life. For 1 month, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I didn't watch the news. And by doing this, it made it far simpler to return to the States and not turn it on at home. As I mentioned last week, how I have adjusted is to watch MBR, that's a nightly business report, an economics report, and then I read a daily brief each morning about the highlights from the day's news from yesterday. That's it. Anything else I have found to be very jarring for me, more so than I've ever felt before. And it was something that I don't know if I would have felt had I not had that month away. And initially, obviously, it was unintentional, as far as I wasn't consciously saying, don't watch the news. I was just enjoying my trip. But then I did start to think about it when I started to get into routine at some of the places I was staying. I'm like, oh, I kind of like this. And I stuck to it for the most part. This is where momentum comes into play. It is very hard to shift gears as behaviors become habituated, even behaviors that are not helpful, as we know. And so when we initially begin to change the habit or behavior, we think the difficulty is due to it not being what is best for us. However, in truth, it is simple science. Anything new, any shift of energy is slow and awkward until it gets going at a good and steady pace. Give yourself the full month to make the shift and redirect your momentum. When we discover that the blue sky was deeply blue today, far more than it was last week, we realize the pace we have been living previously was not allowing us the ability to be present, to observe, and to appreciate how blue that sky really was. That's just an analogy, or that's just one example, I should say. But in other words, if you begin to see that you're able to be more present and appreciative because of some of the things you're letting go or shifting, consider if that's improving the quality of your life. And if it is, keep those changes in place, or in place in such a way that would enable you to continue to be present. Such appreciation is part of improving the quality of our lives. And when we return after the month we challenged ourselves to above or in what the list I just shared and begin to watch some television, for example, we do so more discerningly, more thoughtfully, as we now recognize that indeed what we watch indirectly affects our emotions and thus the quality of our lives. May in 1 month's time you have more free time and therefore a life of increased quality. I know you can do it. Now, I've included 4 more episodes in post in a list of similar posts that you might enjoy. Some of them have to do with our thinking. Another one has to do with how to live a life of quality. I've also shared a post that shares a list of 26 ways to create the life you want, as well as episode 206, which are simple life hacks to get your life back on track. So if you want to go deeper into this topic, those posts or episodes are on today's show notes, simplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast 224. And now I'm going to take a quick break and come back with this week's Petit Plaisir. I think you're going to love it. I'll see you in just a few. Welcome back. All right. 2 weeks ago on the weekly This and That, I shared that the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, the book that was an international bestseller back in 2009, was a movie or a film on Netflix. And I also shared with you that I had not read this book yet, this novel yet. And it's only been, 9 years. But I wanted to read it. And I have put a hold on it in my local library. So have 15 other people. And there are only 5 copies in the library. So I'm waiting very patiently. And I could not wait, guys. I couldn't wait to watch the film. Especially after a handful of you in the comments of that post said, you're going to love the film. It's great. And I trust you guys. And so last weekend, I watched it. And I smiled and I laughed and I cried tears of happiness and sadness, and at the end, lots of tears of happiness. And I can't wait to read the book. The novel is of the same title, And I think it's an interesting story. If you don't know the story behind the author, I'd like to share that with you today. The author, if you notice on the cover of the book, has two names. You have Marianne Schaeffer and you have Annie Barrows. Now, the primary author is Marianne Schaeffer. And it was her niece, Annie Barrows, who finished the novel when Marianne passed away in 2008. But I'd like to read you a biography from bookreporter.com that shares where Marianne got the idea for the book, the novel, The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. So this is read from bookreporter.com. Marianne Schaeffer became interested in Guernsey while visiting London in 1976. On a whim, she decided to fly to Guernsey, but became stranded there when a thick fog descended and all boats and planes were forbidden to leave the island. Now, if you know, this is a pause for a second in the biography. Guernsey is an island. If you've never read the book, it's an island off the north shore of Normandy, France, but it's under, but not part of, it's under the United Kingdom. It's part of the United Kingdom. So they do speak English on the island. And so therefore they were part of the Allies during World War II. All right, back to the biography. As she waited for the fog to lift, warming herself by the heat of the hairdryer in the men's restroom, she read all the books in the Guernsey Airport bookstore, including Jersey Under the Jackboot. Thus began her fascination with the German occupation of the Channel Islands during World War II. Many years later, when goaded by her book club to write a novel, Marianne naturally thought of Guernsey. She chose to write in the epistolary form, which is a form of letters. The novel is a form of a bunch of letters back and forth because, quote, for some bizarre reason, I thought it would be easier, end quote. Several years of work yielded the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society novel, which was greeted with avid enthusiasm, first by her family, then by her writing group, and finally by publishers around the world. Sadly, as I mentioned, Marianne's health began to decline shortly thereafter, and she asked her niece, Annie Barrows, to help her finish the book. So you have a book that tells a fantastic story about a young author, female author, in London who makes a connection with one of the residents on Guernsey Island just after World War II. And there are a lot of progressive ideas with regards to the fact that you have this successful woman writer who has her own means, who has her own money, and you have various shifts in society that are happening. And again, I haven't read the novel, just watched the movie, but I think you will be delighted by it. And one part of what I'm delighted by is who they chose to play the protagonist, Juliet Ashton. Actress Lily James, who you may remember from Downton Abbey. She played Lady Rose Aldridge. She stars as Juliet Ashton. And she does a phenomenal job, in my opinion. And, well, I'll let you listen to the trailer. Here is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society.
Miss Ashton?
Yes.
Have you always wanted to be a writer?
It's a perfect job. Sitting indoors and always near a teapot.
Dear Miss Ashton, my name is Dorsey Adams.
I am part of a book club, the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society.
Oh, you did that beautifully.
It brought us together during the occupation.
Juliet, you cannot go to a book club meeting on the island of Guernsey.
What reading did for these people. Finally, I'll have something serious to write.
Can't imagine Mark would let you get very far anyway.
It's English Channel, not the China Seas.
Dear Mr. Adams, I so hope that you might allow me to come and meet your society.
So happy to make your acquaintance.
Dorsey!
Hello.
Hello.
You painted such a vivid story in your letters. It's so compelling.
You are not what I expected.
How did you imagine me, Mr. Adams?
keep you here. We'll still write to each other, won't we?
Yes, of course.
It's my mistake bringing you back too quickly.
I'm afraid.
I've seen you reach for what you want. You have that courage.
If books do have the power to bring people together, this one may work its magic.
Do you suppose it's possible for us to already belong to someone before we've met them? If so, I belong to the spirit I found among you on Guernsey.
The love story itself is beautiful, but there's even more inspiration in the empowering of the individual to listen to their inner voice, to trust it, to explore without promise, but to trust one's own journey. I think you will enjoy it as well, and I look forward to finally reading that book when it becomes available. Thank you for those that emailed me as well for the recommendation, and for those who commented on the this and that to share their feedback on the film. That's the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society film that's now available on Netflix. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Petit Plaisir, where each week ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable. Tune in at the end of each Monday's podcast where I'll recommend a book, a film, or a recipe. Anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. Before we wrap up today, I just wanted to talk about a few different items of business. First of all, I wanted to express a thank you to a reader or a listener, I should say, who left a review on iTunes that just bowled me over, completely just, I was like, what? And I wanted to share it with you, just to be mentioned in the same breath, in a positive breath as this individual. Anyway, I'll read it for you. The review for the show was a 5-star review, and it came from Eve Bode. And they wrote, "As good as Oprah, my new best friend. I love having these podcasts to listen to, and I really feel like I am listening to a girlfriend giving me tips." Eve, I want to thank you for such a awesome comparison. As I said, just to be mentioned of any positive breath with Oprah is humbling. And no one obviously can be Oprah, but just to be considered anywhere in the positive aspect of her, I am touched by your kind review. If you too are enjoying this podcast, take a moment. You don't even have to write a review. You can just share the starred review of what you, how you feel about the podcast. What it does when you do write a review, though, it shares with other potential listeners what they will discover when they tune in. Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, visit the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com, or pick up my latest book, Living the Simply Luxurious Life, Making Your Everydays Extraordinary and Discovering Your Best Self, now available on Audible and wherever audiobooks are sold, as well as in paperback and ebook versions. You can also pick up my first book, Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, A Modern Woman's Guide, which is also available in paperback, ebook, and as an audiobook as well. To stay caught up on the most recent episodes of the podcast, blog posts, the cooking show, and receive exclusive news as well as an extra dose of inspiration to jumpstart your weekend, subscribe to the Simply Luxurious Life's free weekly newsletter, which arrives in your inbox each Friday to enjoy with a hot cup of tea or cup of morning coffee. Until next Monday, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Bonne journée!